Ray Glier joins us on Sports Byline. He has a book out called How the SEC Became Goliath, the making of college football's most dominant conference. And I know you've covered that conference since 1986. Let me take you back to 1986 for just a moment, Ray. Tell me your first impressions of the SEC.
It was more of a regional league, a more southern league, Ron, and it was dominated by the Tennessees and the Alabamas. But they were still, when Alabama didn't win the title, they were still in the shadow of Penn State and Southern Cal, Ohio State, and Michigan. And they were more a regional league. But when they created their SEC championship game in '92, they started to elevate.
When you think back to 1986, what type of style of play in the league at that time? Was it more power football? Was it run oriented? What was it like back in '86?
It was a tailback oriented league with defensive linemen, and it's a great point you make, Ron, because that's what they do right now, and that's what separates the SEC from other conferences. It's tackle-to-tackle football playing down the middle of the field, and they did that in 1986. They win titles, Ron, because they're more versatile.
And what was the crossover point for them going from being kind of a regional conference to being a powerhouse? Where was that moment? Where did it come, Ray?
Two things happened in an SEC meeting of athletic directors and presidents, Ron, in '91. The first thing was they went to an 8-game schedule. They got out of 6 games. It actually happened in '88, and then they started moving forward more in '92. They expanded their schedule, and teams knew they had to up the ante and get their product better because now they were going to play more conference football games. They were going to play more in conference, and they had to get better. That was the first thing. The second thing, Ron, is when they went to the SEC championship game, the SEC stopped being a regional league. They had the only game on that, besides Army-Navy, that first week in December. They played in Birmingham, the Western champion Alabama against the Eastern champion Florida. They're on national TV. The NFL commissioner came. Keith Jackson did the game, and they jumped out of the box right there.
How did everybody else look upon the SEC before it became the powerhouse it is today?
Well, I can tell you one thing. When the SEC proposed having that game, the other conferences nearly brought a amendment to the floor of the SEC saying, no, you can't do this. This has to be illegal. It wasn't illegal. They thought the SEC was being a little too ambitious, trying to have a conference championship game. Now everybody's got it. But the SEC was looked upon as Alabama, every once in a while, Auburn, because Auburn was very good under Pat Dye with Bo Jackson. But it was a nice Southern league. But Penn State, Michigan State, Ohio State, Southern Cal, Nebraska, they weren't particularly afraid of the SEC.
From a recruiting standpoint, Ray, did they go out of the region very much in getting the athletes that they had?
They did not. Right now, they don't have to. Georgia, Alabama, Florida, South Carolina are and Mississippi are very fertile recruiting areas, and they can stay in the South and find the players they want. Louisiana has the most NFL players per capita. Mississippi is either second or third. Some of this stuff is in the book. So It's very fertile recruiting area down here.
Tell everybody what you mean by big boy football.
Big boy football is playing football between the tackles. It is coveting the tackle ahead of the wide receiver every day. It's old man football, what the kid from Missouri called old man football. The SEC will line up with a quarterback under center on 3rd and 2. A lot of teams in other conferences will go shotgun. The SEC plays tackle to tackle, inside out. They build their teams from the inside out.
The one thing I've always wondered about SEC football, and I've been a little bit surprised that they've had the dominance that they've had. They've won 6 straight national championships. But if you think about it for a second, the Big Ten for a long time were 3 yards in a cloud of dust. And yet that same type of big boy football, if they find themselves behind, how likely are they to be able to catch up playing just big boy football?
Well, that's the one thing that separates the other leagues. The SEC is very versatile, Ron. They will run the ball first, but when they need to pass, they can. And I'll give you an example. Alabama's playing Arkansas. Alabama comes out early and runs running plays from the short hash into the boundary. That is a tight tackle box. That's like a fist fight in a phone booth. They will run in there, and it's very tough football because it's close quarters, and you got to run the football in there and be tough. The next series, Alabama came out and had an empty backfield and started throwing the ball around. The SEC, Ron, is simply more versatile on offense and defense than the rest of college football.
Yeah, and you also say that size matters. Explain that.
If you look at Alabama, for instance, they're prototype kids. Their inside backers are 265-pound, 270-pound thumpers. Those guys are usually defensive linemen in other leagues. Alabama's got a 6'6", 265, 75-pound defensive end that can, with long arms, and these kids can reach the offensive tackle and get their hands on him and move him around before the offensive tackle can get to him. Big boy football and is 220-pound running backs. Other leagues are going with 195-pound, 200-pound running backs. That's what size matters. That's running between the tackles. And Alabama has 3 kids that are 215, 220. LSU has 5. Florida's starting to get back into it. They have, they go 305 or along the offensive line, these teams, which, Wisconsin's bigger, Ohio State's bigger, but they run behind these guys.
The other thing that interests me in what you were saying in the book, you mentioned that the conference is so good because it has better coaches, better stadiums, but this is the one that jumped out at me and I think needs some explaining. Better bank accounts.
Well, if you look at the SEC, they have more than $1 billion in receipts from their schools. $1 billion. Georgia has 92,000. Alabama's up there, 102,000 seat stadium. Let's see, Tennessee's up to about 104,000, and the Swamp is 89,000 in Florida. And this is revenue. These are tickets, and they sell sponsorships, and they have boosters. They have huge TV deals with CBS and ESPN that they signed 4 years ago. They're going to come up. Comcast, I think, is going to jump in and take over and do the SEC network, which is going to be even more revenue stream. They gave each of their schools $21 million last year, Ron. And, for instance, Oregon State, I had somebody out there telling me Oregon State is subsidized up until this year by student fees and by the campus budget. Not anymore with Mr. Scott out there.
Also, you bring up a very good point about the fact that the SEC is about culture, and it's about the region of the country that is kind of almost, in a sense, still fighting the Civil War, aren't they?
Yeah, it's still us against them, damn Yankees. And the South has a lot of pride, and it started, back in the late 1800s. They wanted – football was a way to get even with the North. And back in the late 1800s, historians told me that the South wanted to do some of that rich kid kind of thing, which was to play football. And they wanted to get on even footing with the North by playing football.
We only have a minute left, Ray, but what do you want people to take away from this book?
Probably that the SEC, for being called Goliath, and probably for, some of the resentment that they got here because of passion, culture, better players. They did not necessarily get here by cheating. Everybody wants to say cheating. Well, everybody in college football needs a bar of soap, Ron. You can go from North Carolina to Ohio State to Southern Cal back to Penn State, And the SEC has had its share of bad actors, but they're not the only ones that need a bar. So they didn't get here with major violations. They got here by having somewhat of a conscience and by playing hard-nosed football, which is what I think is going to have to happen for other leagues to come back to reel in the SEC.
I want to thank you very much, Ray, for joining us to talk about the book. I'm looking forward to reading it. Take care. Come back again and join us on Sports Byline.
Ron, thank you for having me.
Ray Glier with us again. You may want to check out this book. It's a pretty interesting read. It's called How the SEC Became Goliath, the Making of College Football's Most Dominant Conference. We continue on Sports Byline.